Margaret had been living with Parkinson's for 7 years and had developed what she thought was a perfect medication routine. Her neurologist had carefully adjusted her levodopa doses over months, and for a while, everything seemed to be working beautifully. She would take her morning pill at 7 a.m., and like clockwork, within 30 minutes she would feel her body relax. Her tremors would decrease, and she could move freely for the next 3 to 4 hours. But then something changed over the course of just a few weeks. Her morning medication stopped working predictably. Some days, it would kick in after 20 minutes like before, but other days, she would wait 45 minutes an hour, even 90 minutes, and still feel rigid and frozen, wondering if her medication had somehow stopped working. Her neurologist increased her dose, thinking she needed more medication, but that did not help either. The unpredictability continued, and Margaret felt increasingly frustrated and frightened, thinking her Parkinson's was progressing rapidly. Then during one of our consultations, I asked her a simple question that changed everything. "What do you eat for breakfast?" Margaret looked at me confused about why I was asking about food when we were discussing her medication problems, but she answered anyway. "I have a healthy breakfast," she said, "Greek yogurt with granola and a banana, plus my morning vitamins. And I always take my medication with a big glass of orange juice, because I read that vitamin C helps with absorption." And there it was, the answer to why her medication had become so unpredictable. But it was not what Margaret expected. The problem was not the orange juice or the banana, or even the timing of her breakfast. The culprit was something that almost everyone considers not just harmless, but actually healthy. Something that doctors and nutritionists have recommended for decades. Something that is probably sitting in your refrigerator right now, and something that could be sabotaging your Parkinson's medication effectiveness by up to 80%. Without you having any idea it is happening today, I'm going to reveal this seemingly innocent food that is devastating for Parkinson's medication absorption. And I'm going to explain exactly why it causes such massive problems, how to identify if this is affecting you, and what to do about it immediately. Because once you understand this connection, you can make a simple change that could transform your medication effectiveness within just days, giving you back hours of good mobility that you thought you had lost forever. Before we dive into exactly what this food is and why it is so problematic, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? And have you experienced unpredictable medication responses, where some days your pills work great and other days they barely seem to work at all? Leave a comment below with your location and your experience, because understanding how common this problem is can help our entire community realize they are not alone in this frustration. Now let me tell you about the shocking food that could be sabotaging your medication every single day. The food that is sabotaging Parkinson's medication for millions of people is protein consumed at the wrong times and in the wrong forms. And I know what you are thinking. Protein is essential. Protein is healthy. I need protein for my muscles and my immune system. And you are absolutely right. Protein is essential for health. And people with Parkinson's absolutely need adequate protein intake. But here is the critical truth that most doctors do not have time to explain. In a 15-minute appointment, the timing and type of protein you consume can make the difference between your medication working beautifully or barely working at all. Let me explain the science of why protein is such a massive problem for levodopa, which is the most common and effective Parkinson's medication. Levodopa is an amino acid specifically. It is a large, neutral amino acid. And when you take your medication, that levodopa needs to be absorbed from your small intestine into your bloodstream and then transported across the blood-brain barrier into your brain, where it gets converted into dopamine. But here is where the problem starts. Every type of protein you eat, whether it is from meat, fish, eggs, dairy, beans, or nuts, breaks down in your digestive system into amino acids. And many of these amino acids are also large neutral amino acids, just like levodopa, which means they use the exact same transporters, the exact same absorption pathways, and the exact same entry mechanisms across the blood-brain barrier as your medication. Think of it like this. Imagine your small intestine and blood-brain barrier have special doorways that allow large neutral amino acids to pass through. But these doorways can only handle a limited number of amino acids at a time. They are like small gates with limited capacity. When you take your levodopa medication, those amino acid molecules from your pill line up at these gates ready to pass through and get absorbed. But if you have recently eaten protein, your digestive system is flooded with amino acids from that protein. And those dietary amino acids rush to the same gates, competing directly with your medication for absorption. And here is the devastating part. Dietary amino acids from the protein you eat vastly outnumber the amino acids from your medication. A typical levodopa dose might contain 100 to 200 milligrams of levodopa, but a single serving of chicken breast contains over 25,000 milligrams of amino acids. It is not even a fair competition. It is like having two people trying to get through a door while being pushed by a crowd of 200. The two individuals do not stand a chance. Research published in the New England Journal of Medicine back in 1991 and confirmed by dozens of studies since then has shown that consuming protein within 1 hour before or after taking levodopa can reduce medication absorption by 40 to 70%. In some patients, the reduction is even more dramatic, with medication absorption dropping by 80% or more. That means only 20% of your medication dose is actually getting into your system and reaching your brain where it can work. The other 80% is essentially wasted, never getting absorbed properly, and eventually being eliminated from your body without providing any therapeutic benefit. But here is what makes this even more insidious, and why so many patients like Margaret experience unpredictable medication responses. The amount of protein interference varies dramatically, depending on what type of protein you ate, how much you ate, and your individual digestive speed. If you eat 3 ounces of chicken, you get 1 level of amino acid competition. If you eat 6 ounces, you get double the competition. If you eat quickly, digesting proteins like whey protein powder or Greek yogurt, those amino acids flood your system, rapidly creating intense short-term competition. If you eat slowly, digesting proteins like steak or beans, the amino acid release is more gradual but lasts longer. This variability is why your medication might work great on Monday when you happen to eat a small amount of protein several hours before your dose, but work terribly on Tuesday when you ate a larger protein serving closer to your medication time. You think your Parkinson's is getting worse or your medication is failing. Actually, it is just protein interference. And the worst part is most patients have no idea this is happening. They just know their medication seems unpredictable, and they feel frustrated and frightened watching their good hours slip away. A landmark study from the University of Michigan, published in 2019, examined this exact problem. Researchers gave Parkinson's patients the exact same dose of levodopa on different days, but varied when and how much protein the patients consumed. The results were shocking. When patients took levodopa on an empty stomach with no protein for 2 hours before or 90 minutes after the medication, the average time to reach peak blood levels was 42 minutes, and the peak concentration was high enough to provide excellent symptom control. But when those same patients took the exact same medication dose just 30 minutes after eating a high-protein meal, the average time to peak blood levels jumped to 98 minutes, more than twice as long, and the AOR peak concentration reached only 37% of what it was on an empty stomach. In other words, the protein did not just slow down the medication, it dramatically reduced how much medication actually got into their system. Even more concerning, 23% of patients in the high-protein condition never reached therapeutic blood levels at all, meaning their medication essentially did not work that day. Not because the medication failed, not because their disease progressed, but simply because they ate protein at the wrong time. Now let me tell you about the specific proteins that are the absolute worst offenders for medication interference, because not all proteins are equally problematic. The worst protein sources for levodopa interference are dairy products, and this is the shocking truth that Margaret discovered was sabotaging her medication every single morning. Dairy proteins, particularly whey protein and casein protein, which make up the protein content in milk, yogurt, cheese, and all dairy products, are uniquely problematic for several reasons. First, dairy proteins are rapidly digested and absorbed, which means they flood your system with competing amino acids very quickly. Within just 20 to 30 minutes of consuming dairy products, your blood is saturated with amino acids that compete with levodopa. Second, dairy proteins are extremely high in the specific types of amino acids that compete most directly with levodopa, particularly branched chain amino acids like leucine, isoleucine, and valine. These amino acids have an especially strong affinity for the same transporters that levodopa uses, which means they are particularly effective at blocking levodopa absorption. Third, dairy products are liquid or semi-liquid, which means they empty from your stomach faster than solid foods reaching your small intestine, right? When your medication is trying to absorb this, creates maximum competition at exactly the wrong time. Research specifically examining dairy protein. Interference published in the journal Clinical Neuropharmacology found that consuming just 8 ounces of milk within 30 minutes of taking levodopa reduced medication absorption by an average of 55%, and in some patients, the reduction was as high as 78% Greek yogurt, which has become incredibly popular. As a health food is even worse because it contains 2 to 3 times more protein than regular yogurt. A single serving of Greek yogurt can contain 15 to 20 grams of rapidly absorbing dairy protein, which creates massive competition for levodopa absorption. One of my patients named Stephen was having a protein smoothie every morning, made with whey protein powder milk and Greek yogurt. Thinking he was doing something healthy for his body, he would take his morning medication and then 30 minutes later drink his smoothie and then wonder why his medication took over an hour to start working and never seemed to work, as well as his doctor said it. Should when we eliminated that morning smoothie and replaced it with a fruit and oat-based smoothie with no protein powder and no dairy, his medication response transformed within 3 days. He was experiencing medication onset within 25 to 30 minutes consistently, and his symptom control lasted an hour longer than it had been. His tremors decreased significantly, his rigidity improved, and he told me he felt like he had been given a new medication, when in reality, it was the same. Medication just finally able to work properly without dairy interference, but dairy is not the only problematic protein. Red meat, particularly beef, is also highly problematic for levodopa absorption, for different reasons. Red meat is very slowly digested, which means it sits in your stomach and small intestine for hours, continuing to release amino acids that compete with multiple medication doses throughout the day. A study from Johns Hopkins found that patients who ate red meat for lunch experienced reduced effectiveness not just of their lunchtime medication, but also of their mid-afternoon and even early evening doses, because the meat was still being digested and releasing competing amino acids hours after the meal. Eggs are another commonly consumed breakfast protein that interferes significantly with morning medication. A 2-egg omelette contains about 12 grams of protein, which is enough to substantially reduce levodopa absorption if consumed within 90 minutes of medication. Processed protein supplements, including protein bars, protein shakes, and meal replacement drinks, are particularly devastating because they contain concentrated, isolated proteins that are designed for rapid absorption, which means maximum competition with levodopa in the critical absorption window. So, does this mean you should never eat protein again? Absolutely not. Protein is essential for health, muscle maintenance, immune function, and overall well-being. People with Parkinson's need adequate protein intake, typically 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight per day. The key is strategic protein timing and redistribution, which means concentrating your protein intake at times when it will not interfere with your medication effectiveness. Before we continue with the solution and how to time your protein strategically, I want to pause and ask something that could help both you and others in our community. What time of day do you find your Parkinson's medication works least predictably? Eat your morning dose when you are trying to get your day started, your midday dose when you are trying to stay active through the afternoon, or your evening dose when you are hoping for a comfortable night. Share your experience in the comments below and include what you typically eat around that medication time, because recognizing patterns between your food intake and medication effectiveness is the first step towards solving this frustrating problem. And when you share your experience, you might help someone else recognize their own pattern that they had not connected before. Remember, this community is built on shared experiences and collective wisdom, and your insights matter. Now let us talk about the exact strategy for timing protein to maximize your medication effectiveness while still getting the nutrition you need. The solution to the protein interference problem is called protein redistribution and strategic protein timing, and it has been studied extensively in Parkinson's patients. With remarkable results. Here is how it works. Instead of eating protein evenly distributed throughout the day at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which is how most Americans eat, you strategically concentrate most of your daily protein intake at one meal, specifically dinner, which comes after your last medication dose of the day. This approach allows your morning and midday medication doses to work optimally without protein competition, while still providing your body with all the protein it needs, just timed strategically. Let me give you the exact protocol that has worked for hundreds of my patients and has been validated in clinical research. First, your morning medication routine. Wake up and immediately take your first medication dose with a full glass of water on a completely empty stomach. Then wait a minimum of 60 minutes, but ideally 90 minutes before eating anything at all. I know this waiting period can feel difficult when you are rigid and hungry, but this is the single most important medication dose of your day because you have been without medication all night and your dopamine levels are at their lowest. Giving this dose the best possible chance to absorb without interference sets up your entire day for success. When you finally eat breakfast after that 60 to 90 minute wait, choose a completely protein-free breakfast. This is critical. Your breakfast should contain no meat, no eggs, no dairy, no protein powder, no Greek yogurt, none of the common breakfast proteins. Instead, build your breakfast around carbohydrates, fruits, and healthy fats. Excellent protein-free breakfast options include oatmeal made with water or almond milk, topped with berries, banana and a drizzle of honey or maple syrup, whole grain toast with avocado, tomato, and a side of fruit, a smoothie made with banana berries, spinach, oat milk, and ground flaxseed, but no protein powder, fruit salad with granola and a small amount of nuts, brown rice with sautéed vegetables and olive oil, or whole grain, cereal with almond milk and sliced banana. These breakfasts provide energy, fiber, vitamins, and minerals without any protein that would interfere with your medication. And before you say, "But I will be starving by mid-morning without protein," let me tell you that most patients find these breakfasts surprisingly satisfying because the fiber from whole grains and fruits provides sustained energy. And once your medication kicks in properly without protein interference, you actually feel so much better that hunger becomes less of an issue. Second, your late morning and midday medication doses. Take your next medication dose typically around 10:30 a.m. or 11 a.m. again on an empty stomach, or at least 3 hours after your protein-free breakfast. Wait another 60 to 90 minutes before eating lunch. When lunchtime arrives, you have two options. Option 1 is to have another completely protein-free lunch built around vegetables, whole grains, and fruits. This maximizes the effectiveness of your afternoon medication doses. Option 2, if you feel you need some protein at lunch, is to include a very small amount, no more than 2 to 3 ounces of lean protein like chicken or fish. But save this protein for the very end of your meal, eating all your vegetables and grains first and only then eating the small protein portion. This minimizes the competition. Your afternoon medication will face good low-protein or protein-free lunch options. Include a large salad with lots of vegetables, whole grain, bread or croutons, and an oil-based dressing. No chicken, no cheese, vegetable soup with whole grain bread, and a side salad, pasta with marinara sauce, and lots of vegetables. Brown rice bowl with black beans, vegetables and avocado. Note that beans are plant-based protein, but they digest much more slowly than animal protein, causing less acute interference. Or a veggie sandwich on whole grain bread with avocado, hummus, lettuce, tomato, and other vegetables. Third, your afternoon medication dose. Take your afternoon medication around 2:30 or 3 p.m. at least, 2.5 to 3 hours after finishing lunch. Wait 60 to 90 minutes before having any afternoon snack. When you do snack, choose carbohydrate-based options like fruit crackers or vegetables with hummus and save any protein-containing snacks for much later in the day. Fourth, your evening medication and dinner. Take your final medication dose of the day around 6 or 6:30 p.m. on an empty stomach, then wait the full 60 to 90 minutes before eating dinner. This is your last dose, so you want it to work optimally for your evening activities and nighttime comfort. Now here is where protein redistribution comes in. When you finally eat dinner, around 7:30 or 8 p.m., this is when you can and should eat your main protein portion of the day, because you have already waited for your medication to absorb, and you will not take another dose until tomorrow morning. The protein you eat at dinner will not interfere with any medication. Structure your dinner plate like this. Half the plate filled with non-starchy vegetables like broccoli, green beans, salad, or roasted vegetables. 1/4 of the plate with a complex carbohydrate like brown rice, quinoa, sweet potato, or whole grain pasta, and 1/4 of the plate with your protein source. This could be 4 to 6 ounces of chicken, fish, beef, tofu, or beans. By eating in this sequence, vegetables first, then carbohydrates, then protein. You ensure optimal digestion and you naturally moderate your protein portion because you have already eaten a large volume of vegetables and carbs. This single evening meal should contain the majority of your daily protein intake, typically 40 to 60 grams depending on your body weight, which is enough to meet your nutritional needs without causing medication. Interference research validating this protein redistribution approach is extensive and impressive. A landmark study published in Neurology in 1992 followed 27 Parkinson's patients who switched to a protein redistribution diet where they consumed less than 10 grams of protein before dinner and concentrated all remaining protein at dinner within 3 weeks. Patients reported an average increase of 2.8 hours of daily on time, meaning 2.8 more hours per day of good mobility and symptom control without any change in medication doses at all. A more recent study from 2018 followed 94 Parkinson's patients using the same protein redistribution strategy for 12 weeks. The results were even more impressive. Patients experienced an average of 3.4 additional hours of on-time per day. Significant improvements in motor scores reduced dyskinesia, which are involuntary movements that can result from levodopa therapy, and improved quality of life scores. And here is what really matters. These improvements were sustained over time, as long as patients continued the protein redistribution pattern. One of my patients, named Carol, had been struggling with unpredictable medication responses for over 2 years. Some days, she would have maybe 3 hours total of decent mobility, while other days, she might get 5 or 6 hours, but she never knew which it would be, and the unpredictability was almost worse than the symptoms themselves. She could not make plans, could not commit to activities, and felt completely at the mercy of her disease when we implemented strict protein redistribution with completely protein-free breakfasts and lunches and all her protein concentrated at dinner. Her life transformed within 1 week. She was consistently getting 6 to 7 hours of good mobility every single day. Her medication timing became completely predictable. She could plan activities, knowing she would feel good, and her tremors and rigidity decreased. Noticeably, she told me, it felt like she had gone back in time 2 years in terms of symptom severity, and she wished desperately that someone had told her about protein timing when she was first diagnosed. If this information is opening your eyes to a major missing piece in your Parkinson's management, I want to strongly encourage you to subscribe to the Beyond Parkinson channel. Right now, we create detailed evidence-based videos like this one every single week, covering medication, optimization, nutrition strategies, exercise techniques, and emerging treatments, all specifically designed for people living with Parkinson's disease. The information we share here is often more detailed and practical than what you receive in brief doctor appointments, because we have the time to really explain the science and give you step-by-step implementation strategies. Our community of subscribers regularly tells us that the strategies they have learned here have dramatically improved their quality of life and symptom control. Subscribing is completely free and ensures you will be notified every time we publish a new video that could help you manage Parkinson's more effectively. Just click the subscribe button below this video right now, and then click the bell icon so you never miss important information that could make a real difference in your daily life. We are building a community of informed, empowered people who refuse to let Parkinson's control their lives, and we would love to have you as part of it. Now let me address some common questions and concerns about protein redistribution that patients often have. The first question I always get is, will I be hungry all day if I do not eat protein until dinner? And the answer for most people is no, and here is why. When you eat adequate complex carbohydrates, which digest slowly and provide sustained energy along with plenty of fiber from fruits and vegetables, you stay surprisingly satisfied. Plus, once your medication starts working properly without protein interference, you feel so much better physically that hunger becomes less of an issue. Many patients tell me they actually have less hunger and fewer cravings on a protein redistribution plan compared to when they were eating protein throughout the day because their blood sugar stays more stable. However, if you do experience significant hunger in the afternoon, there are a few strategies you can use. First, make sure you are eating enough total calories at your protein-free meals. It is easy to undereat when you eliminate protein, so be generous with your portions of vegetables, grains, and fruits. Second, consider having a more substantial mid-afternoon snack. Around 4 or 4:30 p.m., something like hummus with vegetables or a small portion of nuts which contain some protein but digest slowly and cause less medication interference than animal proteins. Third, you can slightly modify the protocol by including a very small amount of protein at lunch, around 2 to 3 ounces, as long as you time it carefully at least 3 hours before your next medication dose. The second common question is, will I lose muscle mass if I only eat protein once per day? And this is an important concern, especially for older adults with Parkinson's who are already at risk for sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss. The good news is that research shows you do not lose muscle mass with protein redistribution as long as your total daily protein intake is adequate. Studies have found that total daily protein intake matters much more for muscle maintenance than the distribution of that protein throughout the day. So if you are consuming 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight daily, which for most people is 60 to 90 grams per day, you will maintain muscle mass, even if all that protein is consumed at dinner. Additionally, the increased mobility and function that most patients experience from better medication effectiveness allows them to be more physically active, which actually helps maintain and build muscle better than eating protein at every meal, while remaining sedentary due to poor medication control. The third question is, what about medication doses that are not working, even with protein restriction? And this is important to address. Protein interference is a major factor in medication unpredictability, but it is not the only factor. Other things that can affect levodopa absorption include gastroparesis, which is delayed stomach emptying, that is common in Parkinson's. If your stomach empties slowly, your medication sits in your stomach longer before reaching your small intestine where it is absorbed. This can be helped by eating smaller meals, avoiding high-fat foods, and sometimes using medications that promote gastric emptying dehydration, which reduces blood volume and can slow medication absorption. Aim for at least 8 glasses of water daily. Constipation, which is very common in Parkinson's and can affect medication absorption. Addressing constipation through fiber hydration, and sometimes medications can improve medication effectiveness. Stress and anxiety, which affect gut function and can slow medication. Absorption relaxation techniques. Deep breathing and stress management can help, and individual variation. Some people simply absorb medications differently due to genetic factors or other medical conditions. If you are following strict protein redistribution and still experiencing poor medication response, discuss with your neurologist whether medication timing, dose adjustments, or formulation changes might help. The fourth question is, can I ever eat protein at breakfast or lunch again, or is this forever? And the answer is that protein redistribution is most important when your symptoms are not well controlled and your medication effectiveness is unpredictable. Once you have achieved stable symptom control with protein redistribution, some patients can gradually reintroduce small amounts of protein at lunch while maintaining protein-free breakfasts and still maintain good medication effectiveness. However, breakfast should generally remain protein-free long-term because the morning medication dose is the most critical for most patients, and protein interference with that dose has the biggest impact on your entire day. Think of protein redistribution as a tool you can adjust based on your symptoms. If you notice your medication becoming less predictable again, you can always return to stricter protein timing. One of my patients named Thomas followed strict protein redistribution for 6 months with excellent results. Then he gradually added small amounts of protein at lunch, around 3 ounces of chicken or fish, and found his medication still worked well, so he continued that pattern. But he always kept breakfast completely protein-free because he noticed that any protein at breakfast made his morning medication less effective for him. The sweet spot was protein-free breakfast, low-protein lunch, and normal protein dinner, and that pattern has kept his symptoms well controlled for 3 years now. Now let me give you a complete sample day showing exactly what to eat and when to maximize medication effectiveness while getting adequate nutrition. This is a real plan that you can start implementing tomorrow morning. 6:30 a.m. wake up and immediately take first medication dose with water. 7:45 a.m. After waiting 75 minutes, eat breakfast oatmeal made with water, topped with blueberries, sliced banana, ground flaxseed, and a drizzle of maple syrup, plus a glass of orange juice. Total protein, approximately 4 grams, which is low enough to have minimal interference. 10:30 a.m. take second medication dose with water. Noon, after waiting 90 minutes, eat lunch, large salad with mixed greens, tomatoes, cucumbers, bell peppers, carrots, chickpeas, and olive oil vinaigrette, plus a whole grain roll and an apple. Total protein approximately 8 grams, mainly from the chickpeas, which are slowly digested plant protein. 2:45 p.m. Take third medication dose with water. 4:15 p.m. After waiting 90 minutes, have an afternoon snack. Apple slices with almond butter or a small handful of nuts and some whole grain crackers. Total protein, approximately 6 grams. 6:30 p.m. Take fourth and final medication dose of the day. With water. 8 p.m. After waiting 90 minutes, eat dinner. Large portion of roasted broccoli and carrots, a medium-sized baked sweet potato with olive oil and herbs, and a 5-ounce grilled chicken breast seasoned with lemon and rosemary, plus a side salad. Total protein, approximately 40 grams. 9:30 p.m. if desired. Have a light evening snack like fruit or a small piece of dark chocolate. Total daily protein intake, approximately 58 grams, which is adequate for most people. Total daily on time with this schedule. Typically 6 to 8 hours compared to 3 to 5 hours with protein eaten throughout the day. This schedule ensures every medication dose has optimal absorption without protein competition, while still providing complete nutrition and the flexibility to adjust portion sizes based on your individual needs. Now, I want to address one final critical point about protein timing, that many patients do not realize the type of Parkinson's medication you take matters when it comes to protein interference. Levodopa, carbidopa combinations, which include Sinemet, Parcopa, Rytary, and Duopa, are all affected by protein interference because they all contain levodopa, which is an amino acid. However, some Parkinson's medications are not affected by protein at all. Dopamine agonists like pramipexole, which is Mirapex ropinirole, which is Requip, and rotigotine, which is Nupro-Patch, do not compete with dietary protein and can be taken with meals. MAO-B inhibitors like selegiline, which is Eldepril or Zelapar, and rasagiline, which is Azilect, are also not affected by protein timing. QOMT inhibitors like entacapone, which is Comtan, are often combined with levodopa and help levodopa work longer, but do not themselves have protein interactions. Amantadine, which works through a different mechanism, also does not have protein interactions. So if you are taking any of these non-levodopa medications, you do not need to worry as much about protein timing. However, most Parkinson's patients eventually require levodopa because it is the most effective medication for motor symptoms. So understanding protein timing becomes critical for almost everyone at some point in their disease journey. If you are not sure whether your specific medications are affected by protein interference, ask your pharmacist or neurologist. They can tell you exactly which of your medications contain levodopa and therefore require careful protein timing for people with Parkinson's who are struggling with unpredictable medication effectiveness, frequent off periods, or symptoms that seem to be worsening rapidly. Understanding the connection between protein timing and medication absorption can be absolutely life-changing. The seemingly harmless habit of eating protein throughout the day, particularly at breakfast and lunch, is sabotaging medication effectiveness for millions of Parkinson's patients who have no idea why their pills are not working consistently. By implementing protein redistribution, concentrating your daily protein intake at dinner after your last medication dose, while keeping breakfast and lunch protein-free or very low protein, you can increase your daily on-time by an average of 2 to 4 hours without any change in medication doses. This means 2 to 4 more hours every single day of good mobility, reduced tremors, better function, and improved quality of life just from changing when you eat protein, not how much total protein you consume. The scientific evidence supporting this approach is extensive, with multiple studies showing dramatic improvements in medication effectiveness, motor function, and quality of life when patients follow strategic protein timing. And the best part is you can start implementing this today with your very next meal and begin seeing improvements within just a few days. If this video has revealed a missing piece in your Parkinson's management puzzle, I want to invite you to become part of our Beyond Parkinson community. By subscribing to this channel, we are dedicated to providing evidence-based, practical strategies that help you live better with Parkinson's every single day. Our weekly videos cover medication optimization, nutrition, exercise, emerging treatments, and daily living strategies, all specifically designed for people with Parkinson's and their families. Our subscriber community is supportive, engaged, and actively working to take control of their health rather than letting Parkinson's control them. Subscribing is free and ensures you will never miss important information that could improve your symptoms and quality of life. Just click the subscribe button below and click the bell icon for notifications. Thank you so much for watching today. Thank you for being willing to make changes to optimize your health, and thank you for being part of a community that believes knowledge is power, and small changes can create massive improvements. Remember that protein is not your enemy, but protein timing can make or break your medication. Effectiveness starts with one change tomorrow. Make your breakfast protein-free and watch what happens to your morning medication response. I think you will be amazed at the difference it makes. I look forward to seeing you in the comments below and in our next video, where we will continue exploring evidence-based strategies for living well with Parkinson's. Until then, take excellent care of yourself. Trust the process and remember that you have more control over your symptoms than you might think through strategic nutrition timing. You can transform your medication effectiveness and reclaim hours of good mobility every single day.